But without further ado, I'm going to bring on our guest of the hour. First, we have Matt Williams. Welcome, Matt.
Should unmute myself first. Hey, what's going on, Nick?
Good to see you. So you may know Matt Williams from his fantastic Twitter threads breaking down players for the upcoming season, or you may know him as the host of the Turn 2 podcast, or you may know him as the co-founder of the recently launched fantasy website, Roto Fanatic. You can find Matt on Twitter at MattWI77IAMS. Welcome, Matt, and congratulations on your launch.
Thanks. Really, we're not really going to talk about the shortened season. We're here to shake you down for an hour for more donations. We're just loan sharks. We're just here to get more money out of you for an entire hour. That's all we're going to do.
Awesome. Well, really good to have you here. Joining you, of course, is Mike Kurland. Welcome, Mike.
What's going on, man? Thank you for having me on.
And of course, Mike Kurland is the other co-founder of the newly launched Roto Fanatic website. He's also the host of the Bases Loaded Pod, a contributor over at Roto Baller, and an FSWA Award finalist. You can find Mike on Twitter at Mike_Kurland. Welcome.
Thank you, man. Really do appreciate it, and just happy to be here.
No, I'm very glad that you can make it happen. Joe Bond is here. Joe, good to see you,
What's
man.
going on, man?
How you doing? Joe Bond was kind to bring me onto his podcast a couple weeks ago. I had a great time there. That was super fun. And if you don't know Joe, he is the founder of FantasySixPack.net, as well as the host of the Fantasy Six Pack Hour. Joe's rankings have been listed on Fantasy Pros Top 5. You can find Joe on Twitter at F6P_Joe. Welcome.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on.
Next up is, you might know him as SB Streamer Michael Simione, where you can find him at sbstreamer.com. He's also the host of the SB Streamer podcast, which is a part of the Roto Baller Radio Network. He's recently released a formula to help you successfully stream pitchers. You can find him on Twitter at SBStreamer. Welcome, Michael.
Well, what's going on, Nick? And my last name is pronounced Simione. You were close. It's okay. No one ever gets it right, so don't worry about it.
Right.
Well, it's okay because he had my name and he still misspelled it on the actual banner. He put Matt Kurland instead of Mike Kurland.
That's true.
Right. Was that there?
At least you're Alexis Kurland today.
Yeah, about Alexis Kurland either.
Oh, yeah. It says Matt Kurland. Oh, man.
So now it's like Steve Bogman.
We are just killing it here. My God. I'm so sorry.
Love it.
You.
I love it, man. Thank you.
Way better. And last but not least, I want to bring on MLB Moving Avg. He's a baseball writer over at The Athletic, as well as the creator of the MLB Moving Averages algorithm. He happens to also be a stocks wizard and a co-host of the Turn 2 podcast. You can find him on Twitter at MLB Moving Avg. Welcome.
Yes, what's up, man? It's great work you guys do, Nick. I've been in and out all weekend. Great to see everybody. I kicked my entire family out so I can have all the Wi-Fi.
Well, it's great to have you here, John. And I will say we've seen a lot of different facial hair here. You might have the best I've seen.
Wow, I appreciate that. You know what?
My
My quarantine haircut turned out like yours, so that was the least I could do for my wife. I kind of look like a toe. So I think I can kind of do her a solid.
I think you're trying to look like you're going to join a boy band here.
Yeah, put your hand
Yeah.
back.
Oh, man.
Crying out loud.
Put the hat to the side a little bit. Put the hat to the
When you say that it looks like mine, you're saying it looks great too, right?
Yes, it looks, oh my! I had such beautiful curls.
All right, without further ado, I'm going to let you guys jump into it. Again, thank you so much for being a part of PitchCon.
All right, thanks, Nick. All right, now that he's gone,
Let's talk about what we really want to talk
everyone
about.
have their drinks out.
Now that Dad's away, the boys will play, right? Yeah.
So we're here to talk about a shortened season in Major League Baseball, which is tricky because there's only so much information that we actually know for sure right now. So we're going to go off the information that we know pretty much, which is it's a shortened season. There's less games, and there's probably going to be a universal DH. Those are the things you can pretty much take to the bank, but there's a lot more than just on the surface of there's a DH, therefore more players are going to have at-bats. There's a lot more to get to it. So, there's a lot to get to, so we'll jump right into it. Short season. So you pretty much have to be ready to adjust on the fly because we don't know what people are going to do as far as hot hands, expanded rosters, expanded rotations, six-man rotations. There's a lot of stuff, but we'll go through a little at a time. There's a lot of things to get to. But the first thing that seems to be the most trendy thing is how does this impact the innings limit starting pitchers, like the rookie darlings or people maybe coming off injury? To start with Mr. Simione, Simione, Mike Simione. What do you think of in terms of like who is this really going to benefit the most? Because a lot of the pitchers, you know, the younger guys like Luzardo and even Julio Urias and even like Frankie Montas, who just hasn't built up a lot of innings, they're going to be getting pushed closer to the pack. And, guys like Corey Kluber are going to be pushed a little further back because their value came from being able to pitch an entire season, and that value is gone now. So, where do you think just the innings limit starting pitching is like, how does that really change the value in the short season?
Yeah, so I think it's kind of a case-by-case basis just because I feel like some pitchers who are going to be on limits that, we're probably going to be limited to 180 innings. Now they're going to, like I said, with the shortened season, they're probably going to be allowed to go further into games too. So I feel like people like, Paddock, Fried, Gallen, this boosts their value a little bit more. But when you look at pitchers kind of like Puck or Urias, as you mentioned, I feel like they're still going to limit their innings. So while they could start every 5 days, they might only see 4 to 5 innings. So I don't think it really will boost their value as much. And I really just think, which we're going to end up talking about a little bit, is I think you really need to look at the pitchers who go deep into games and who are probably a little more efficient per inning as well. So I feel like, again, these younger guys who probably were only going to see 120 to 150 innings, you could bump them up slightly, but they're probably only going to see about 4 to 5 innings of work. So I wouldn't be moving them too much.
Now, do you think that this like discounts pitching as a whole? Like, should you wait on elite pitching where people earlier in the season, especially with all the injuries, you were looking to get your ace early, but now with everyone kind of getting pushed back and a lot of people being pushed up, does it make more sense to like load up on hitters first? Because it looks like innings pitched, like you said, and at bats are going to be at a premium, because we'll get to the DH in a little bit, but going to John, because I know you did a lot of MLB moving averages with the beautiful facial hair. You did some study on the, as far as how efficient guys were going to be, because there could be 6-man rotations, there could be expanded rosters, bullpens could be used more. We don't know what they're going to do. So it's kind of a team by team, pitcher by pitcher basis. But from what you found, what are the kind of pitchers you should be targeting? Because, this is a big deal. Like you said, innings pitched and at bats are at a premium. Not everyone's going to get them.
Yeah. So uncertainty is the name of the game right now. It's the lay of the land. And I've been basing my own analysis on the objective facts that do come in. So what we do know so far is it's going to be a shortened season. How would I react as such? It's probably basing more on ratios, and opposed from people that kind of compile that are going to need 200 innings to get there. Ratios should supersede a time limit. Again, I'm saying this with some degree of confidence that I don't really have, because we all know that anybody could break out for a half a year, a quarter year, and there could be a ADP 500 player to win an MVP in a short season. So I'm focusing on ratios, and more so because of what you're saying. Again, it's really critical to kind of hit the nail on the head here, is to try and combine those things. So you talked about distance is a big deal. I'd like to just a little bit of math, everybody. If Matt has a starter that only goes 5 innings every game, and I have a starter that goes 6 innings every game, if you play that out over the course of the season, I got 20% more innings. And so that's where you're going to get your counting stats. So focus on, I'm calling it, per game efficacy, looking for guys with high ceilings on a per game basis. And after that, it's kind of a crapshoot. Matthew evaluation, last thing for me is, I don't think it changed it much, because you needed pitching before and you need pitching now. You needed high-end pitching before and you still need it now. Yeah, the names might mix up because of perceived values. You mentioned guys like Puck before. Of course, I wasn't able to mention Fried before Mike did. Surprise. But that's really it. I'm basing it on guys that do more than one thing well in terms of ratios.
Well, speaking of ratios, we were going to talk about this a little later when we got to some streaky hitters and pitchers. Ratio guys specifically, I saw someone in the chat said Mike Soroka for MVP. Some would argue he's an expensive Kyle Hendricks if he doesn't change anything. Then you have Kyle Hendricks himself. Then you have the poor man's Kyle Hendricks in Dallas Keuchel. Ratio pitchers who kind of usually need like an entire season to prove their value if they're not bringing you strikeouts. Do you value them? Like I'll go to Mr. Sleepy K, Mike Kurland. Do you value these guys any differently in a shortened season because they don't have enough innings to kind of build up their resume, kind of like the Whit Merrifield of pitching, where you need 700 plate appearances to get you, the counting stats you need? Like, what do you think of the value in a shortened season?
Meh.
Heartbreaking analysis from Kurland.
That's why you brought him on.
Yeah, that's it. I got my one word in. I'm done. No, as far as ratios go, those guys, the ones you mentioned, like those are the lower end ratio guys. They honestly were pushed down my rankings as is.
Kyle Hendricks was?
Yeah, I'm on a Hendricks guy. I mean, I don't know. He's just so meh. Like he really is the only ratio guy I'm really pushing up is somebody like a Greinke, because with a Greinke, I think we talked about this on your podcast the other day. Yep. Greinke, I feel like is still going to be a solid ratio guy. When I say solid, I mean close to a 3, if not less, ERA, and then close to a 1 WHIP, and that's difference making ratios in a shortened season because that is still an anchor to a point to your staff. Whereas Hendricks, we've seen runs of him getting blown up for 5 or 6 ERA, and I'm not saying that can't happen to anybody, but I just feel more confident in a Greinke type to kind of keep those ratios in line with what we expect him to be. Even though he's getting older, he's just shown that he's aging well. Put him in, Houston, and I think there's good things to come. The other guys, though, any other guys outside, like I said, outside that type of elite option as far as ratios go, I have zero interest in. I'm pretty much pushing them down because I'm anchoring my pitching staff with high end guys early, honestly. Because I know we kind of passed that one already, but I personally value high end pitching as far as aces go a little more than I was before because again, you can count on these guys to kind of be who they are, and you can take upside later. But I need the good stuff early to kind of solidify that pitching staff because there's a lot less time to make up on the ratios as a whole throughout a shortened season. So,
now, does anyone have a differing opinion on that? Does anyone feel that ratios have a stronger presence in a shortened season, or does everyone follow suit where you think that they kind of lose value? I mean, everyone obviously is more valuable than some people. Dallas Keuchel may be completely useless now, depending, especially if there's a 6-man rotation. We don't know what they're going to do. Him paired up with Yasmani Grandal, though, who knows? Maybe they can work out something special there with Chicago. But before we go on to hitting, Joe, we get you in on the conversation. Is there any pitchers in particular that you have been more interested in? Maybe not from like even a shortened season standpoint as far as innings, but anyone coming off an injury, or maybe veterans that have had a problem maybe breaking down. Obviously, Chris Sale's out of the picture for this year, but anyone that you were worried about losing stamina down the stretch, or who's someone that you've been evaluating higher? Like, I know I love like Yu Darvish, but he's just someone who getting pushed back while other people are getting pushed forward, because if someone moves forward, someone's moving back. Yeah,
no, a guy that's interesting to me is Hyunjin Ryu. Guy who kind of misses time here and there. Again, we also don't know what the divisions are going to really look like either. But before, a lot of people were pushing him down because he moved to the AL East, and that was just disgusting for his value. But he's a guy who misses a lot of time due to injury, and so now we may not have to worry about that as much. So he's a guy that gets bumped up too. But I also wanted to put my 2 cents into the. I'm all for just. I'm going to load up on the high end pitching too. Those guys are going to be the only ones that I think you can rely on going 6-7 innings. I'm totally in agreement with these guys are going to go 4 or 5 more often than not. Like quality start leagues are in trouble, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's for sure. But as far as, is anyone kind of just on board with the rookies? It sounds like at least everyone on the top row, minus myself, seems to be going wanting to spend up. I'm okay waiting, in my opinion, just because I feel like there's going to be so much that changes. We don't know what teams will be going 6-man rotation. Some will, some won't. You got to be willing to kind of rip the cord early and adjust, which we'll get to probably when we talk about Fab a little later in this in the show. But like, what's going to be the real difference between like Corey Kluber, Aaron Nola, their 100 innings, and Julio Urias if he gets 100 innings? Like before, where it was a massive difference in value. Does anyone think there's really a gigantic difference at this point?
Well, it's just because you're expecting Nola to go further into games than Urias. Like, I don't think Urias could end up with 100 innings, but I could easily see Nola having 20 to 30 more. So I feel like that's what's really setting them apart. Okay.
No, do you just feel that way across the board? You just not trusting the younger guys, or is it a team by team thing? Because we know the Dodgers are going to do their own circus act like usual.
Yeah, I mean, they're a mess. But yeah, overall, I feel like that. And kind of like John said, I mean, these, you're going to get so much more counting stats when it comes to guys going deep into games. So I wouldn't really want to waste a lot of my, draft picks on guys that are only going to go potentially 4 innings and lose out on more strikeouts and all those kinds of things.
All right, we were going to move on to hitting. and the DH, but since we might as well wrap up pitching while we're here. The universal DH, we'll just bring it in now. It's obviously going to affect hitters. There's going to be another position in the lineup. Something that no one's talked about, at least as much, is how it's obviously going to affect the NL pitchers. Instead of facing a pitcher every day, one time through the lineup, you are now putting a very capable bat, in some cases, a very, very capable bat on some teams. So like Nick Castellanos, he doesn't need to play the field anymore. Not that he was not going to be in the lineup anyway, but JD Davis, there's a lot of guys. How does this affect nationally pitching? Is a lot more than you think, like even the elite guys. I mean, is there any particular examples that you guys see that are someone maybe you're not as interested in because of this? I know Soroka is everyone always loves talking about him. There's all those stats where like a majority of his strikeouts, a large majority came from the pitcher spot. So it's something you kind of have to look into. A lot of these guys losing that kind of free out, it changes the dynamic of the entire game plan for them.
I think for me, the only, like, you look at right at the top first off, right? You got Cole and DeGrom. People were flip flopping them 1 and 2. I think this easily puts Cole 1 now ahead of DeGrom. I'm not moving DeGrom any lower than 2 though. But if you just go down the list, yeah, I mean, I think you do have to bump the National League guys down just ever so slightly. Like, I mean, you look at like a Wheeler and guys like that. Like, I'm not as excited about Wheeler now that I know he's not facing a pitcher every 9 at bats.
Kyle Hendricks.
Yeah,
Wheel actually, I still
crashing.
I still have DeGrom above Cole only because I'm not sure how Yankee Stadium's going to treat him. But whatever, you're splitting hairs, 1-2.
Right.
I love the Wheeler. The Wheeler is a great comp, especially in Philly, where his fly ball tendencies were going to hurt him anyway. You take away his free out, that could hurt him really badly.
Yep.
John, you have any thoughts on the NL pitchers here?
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's an obvious kind of fundamental strategic change that goes in, right? A lot of people go in favoring NL pitchers in a coin toss situation across the board because of that. My counter, and although, listen, obviously a major league hitter is going to be better than a pitcher hitting. I'm not here to assert anything otherwise. What I am saying is it's not as stark of a change as we would see had there been a real rule change between seasons where the National League teams are making actionable moves to fill that space now. Now, granted, we have NL teams are going to have an extra hitter, but this is not a hitter that they had planned for. This is kind of a surprise. So it's almost like, well, whatever you kind of got in your roster, you're allowed to put in. Maybe we will see, NL teams scramble to bring in, the Puigs and like these kind of leftover, like Adam Jones, maybe. I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head, like, fringe kind of major leaguers that might fill in and be able to play with the stick. But I think that's really the point of it. This is not like every NL team now has a David Ortiz, a professional DH, anchoring the lineup. That's not the case. Something like Cincinnati, you brought up a good point. They're extremely dangerous now. It gives them a lot of flexibility and stuff like that. They're going to be extremely dangerous. So pitchers in that division get a ding if they stick to divisions. But you understand what I'm saying? Everyone, like, yes, it hurts because it's a hitter, but some of these, because I kind of dug through, some of these guys that we expect to fill in this DH role are not that great.
There is a caveat because it's not just throwing in another hitter in the 9 hole they can hit. They can move around the entire lineup now, and then you cannot pitch around the 8th hitter to get to your free out. You now must pitch to the 8th hitter and the 9th hitter. It kind of changes the dynamic of the entire strategy.
Oh, it absolutely does. You shouldn't have backed off that. It's not sort of. It absolutely changes the dynamic. But I think what I'm getting at is the parentheses is for some teams, much more than others. So like there are American League pitchers that totally excel with 9 hitters on teams that know they're going to have 9 hitters every day. So I'm just not ready to run for the hills is what I'm getting at. You mentioned Darvish before, Matt. People are backing away from him. Yes, I'm fist pumping that one all the way to the bank. I really don't care. You know what I mean? It's not going to affect me that much.
This is definitely one of those topics where once we find out what the division and what the games look like, it'll dramatically change. Like who has to face these horrible teams that actually are equipped to really hurt you with the added bats. Some teams can, some teams can't. Moving into the actual universal DH itself from the obvious offensive standpoint, people will look at it on its face and they'll just look like, all right, there's going to be another hitter in a lineup, and who's that hitter going to be? You just look at who wasn't going to have a job, who's now going to have a job. But obviously this affects more than that. Players that were in a platoon are now maybe not in one now, who are going to get more at bats because of it. Justin Smoke and Ryan Braun, for example, they were now looking at splitting time. Now both of them all of a sudden have a full-time job. So to start with you, Joe, what players are directly impacted that you like the most, that the DH is actually creating a job for, that maybe didn't even have value to start the season?
Yeah, a couple of guys right off the top of my head. I mean, there's a ton of them, obviously, but you mentioned Cincy. That outfield, obviously people wanted Castellanos, but the other outfielders, it was kind of a roll of the dice to figure out which one was going to get playing time. But now you don't really have to worry about it. So I'm much more interested in the rest of those guys now than I was before. Moving over to the Braves, Austin Riley's a guy that I'm much more interested in. I like his bat, but I don't think he was going to get the starting job. All signs were pointing to I'm blanking on the guy's name right now. Yeah, Camargo getting that job. Cespedes is interesting too for the Mets. He's I mean, hey,
he doesn't have to play the field. He's very interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
JD is awful.
He's not gonna get pulled.
He will play every day in left now. JD, even though he's awful, but Cespedes with those heels, he could use the DH.
Yeah. The Cubs are an interesting one to me. I mean, the first player that kind of popped out is Schwarber, but you got to wonder, they were probably going to get his bat in there more often than not anyway. But they got David Ross there. There's a bunch of guys there too. So I'm kind of interested to see how that one plays out. The Dodgers got AJ Pollock is a name to follow there because that outfield was crowded and he didn't have a full-time role. And also in the West, Arizona with Kevin Cron, that's a name I'm looking out for. And then the Padres with Cordero and Myers.
Anyone else before we move on to the less obvious guys that are affected per platoon? John or Mike? Mike and Mike. Do either of you guys have anyone from an obvious standpoint that is going to be getting some at bats here? How about Colorado? Anyone want to touch that?
Yeah.
No.
Oh God.
It goes from meh to no. That's all I gotta say about that.
I mean, if Daniel Murphy,
I'm the other
DH is like he should, right? You move McMahon to first. Maybe Garrett Hampson plays, but it's Colorado. Maybe they just move up. Who am I thinking?
Brendan Rodgers.
Maybe they just move up Brandon Rodgers.
They also have Ian Desmond sitting around there playing in the background. They have Josh Fuentes, who for some reason was getting a ton of run in spring training, which I don't know what that was about. It still pisses me off, and we haven't had spring training in 2 months.
Hey, it's the Rockies. Everyone's so excited about Hilliard, and people don't realize that he was actually splitting at bats with Tapia.
Yeah, Tapia was raking in spring, hit 300 and whatnot.
I think it is a bump for Hilliard, though. I think.
You think it should be. You think it should be.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, listen, it's very hard to predict, especially what the Rockies are going to do. If you were looking to the answer, right? What teams are crowded? So my initial thought is the Rays. So maybe Yandy Diaz sits a little bit less.
They have a DH no matter what.
Yeah, I know, but it's weird. I wondered if teams might attack other teams differently because again, we might get inter-league divisions now. So you wonder if teams will be playing other teams differently, more offensive-minded or more defensive-minded. Whatever, it kind of goes to the uncertainty you were talking about. It's just.
I mean, what these teams should do is make a trade, take advantage of the insufficiency on the NL side, and maybe gain some value off some of these guys that they don't need, like a Rays. The Rays have so many bats they can flip one for a prospect, which is what they do. They trade for prospects, and that kind of just. I mean, that's a whole other tangent. I'm not gonna go there, but just something like that would make sense. I wouldn't be surprised. So.
What about the Padres, Matt? That's another team that, there's always kind of shuffling, playing time concerns. And
they have a DH. It's Will Myers. I mean,
any team, he's their Cespedes. Any team that can afford to get someone out of the field that shouldn't be in the field will be out of the field.
It's crazy, though.
Like me, who I love Grisham so much, I think one of the knocks I kept encountering with Grisham was playing time. I think that path is now fully secured. So if we're making kind of definitive stuff, I'm even harder on the Grisham now. I think he gets if there's a DH, I think he gets an absolute full complement of playing time.
Yeah, all right, let's just spin this. Let's open this up to less obvious guys. I mentioned earlier, there was platoons like Milwaukee. They had Justin Smoke and Ryan Braun splitting time at first. Now that Ryan Braun, with his injury history, can maybe move into the DH, both of them guys actually have a full-time job. You mentioned Cespedes. Joe might get a DH. That opens up at bats for JD Davis. If Cespedes is not ready, that opens up a DH for Robinson Cano. Jeff McNeil moves over. Then JD Davis moves to third. So overall, JD Davis stands to open up a lot of at bats. But Tommy Edman was, he's a Swiss Army knife, so he's probably looking at moving around a lot. But this obviously opens up tremendous at bats for a guy like him. Is there any other players that you guys like that just from a platoon standpoint are now available for a ton more at bats?
You literally took the top two.
Top two?
You took like my top two guys to talk about were JD Davis and Tommy Edman because I've been really high on them lately.
Oh, God, tell everyone why.
Well, gosh, now I'm on the spot. I'm kidding about it. So
here comes the word tangible change.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to save JD Davis for last because he's my favorite, so we save the best for last. But as far as Tommy Edman goes, he was already going to be playing, like you said, pretty frequently, but maybe no sure thing. I think they're going to move Carpenter to DH. That would be my guess. And maybe have him stay at DH more often or not to try to help his back stay healthy. I mean, playing the field less could help that, but ultimately that could line up more playing time for Tommy Edman. And what I really like about him is that the dude just gets on base. I mean, we're talking about a guy that outside of 2017, that was when he was moving through like 3 levels. He pretty much gets on base. He always has a batting average of at least 286 or higher. As recently as the last mid 2018, he was 299 and above. That's my point. So OBP also another big OBP guy. 340 you can almost take to the bank. It seems like. And on top of that, you need speed. We're talking about a guy that offers speed. I wouldn't bank on the power. I know he put up 11. That was with a juice ball. I would barely put 15 on a full season, half season. I don't think he even touches double digits unless he develops a little bit of power to him as far as putting on some muscle mass or whatnot. But what people don't talk about enough is efficiency on the base pass, and the guy is pretty damn efficient on base pass. Just last year, he stole 24 bags on 25 attempts. So you're talking about a guy who gets on base a lot. They actually let him run, which we know that the Cardinals maybe not have always been the most aggressive on base pass. And the two that skill set goes very well. Plus, I believe he's second base eligible if I remember correctly. It shows how long it's been since I've looked at fantasy stuff, huh? So ultimately, you pair position eligibility with a skill set that we all desperately want and need in drafts, and his ADP is still outside the top 115, I believe, or 120. And you can and you're talking about a guy who should gain the benefit. Arguably most or top 5 out of all NL teams, I would say, because so many people are so focused on who's getting a DH, not who could be benefited. So I'm glad we had a chance to highlight Edman. And then of course,
when you say Edman, a lot of teams will be moving their lineups around a lot. You have to put your typically your worst hitter in the 8 hole, and then your pitcher in the 9. The American League almost has that double leadoff, where you can put a guy like Buxton in the 9. Mm-hmm. The National League is going to move around stuff like that. And then you have to add value to teams that are actually more stacked that can maybe add more people on base to the guys batting first or second. A guy like Edman can afford to bat off first or second. There's a lot of things that people aren't taking into account.
What scares me is if they bat him 9th. That's my concern right now.
No, I don't think we have to worry about that with Edman. But it's just something in general.
Roster Resource has him down at 7 right now, but that's without the DH being implemented. So there are a lot of moving parts. Maybe he does move up, or maybe he moves down. That could be, we have to wait and see. We don't know. There's so many uncertainties with him.
Matt, my answer was actually on St. Louis also. I had Edman penciled in for basically full playing time, so I didn't even I saw that.
He probably would have, but this now it's 100%. Now it's 100%.
Who would open the door for us? I'm surprised no one is talking about Tyler O'Neill.
Yep.
Yeah,
I was just going to do it.
Right, he's been bumping up into that ceiling over and over again. He's just not getting over the hump. I mean, if there's a prototypical DH in waiting for a National League team, Tyler O'Neill is it. And you're not talking about plugging in a 9 hitter. He's going to hit 4, 5, 6, I would think. And he's probably a much better version of Matt Carpenter than Carpenter is right now.
Well, we can blow this conversation way open for something I want to talk about later. But playing time, service time is going to be a big issue this year because as the agreement states in writing, any player who plays this season should get a full year of service time that includes rookies, no matter when they are brought up. So, teams that are not going to be competitive at all, like the Tigers, Manning, and Skubal and help me out, was the third head.
Oh my gosh.
Manning, Mize, and
Mize. They probably do not have a chance of really seeing the majors this year. There's no reason. It'll be very different for teams like Baltimore or Mountcastle, who's obviously ready to go. But sticking with the Cardinals, who we were just sitting with, Dylan Carlson. Now that there's a DH, Dexter Fowler's not very good. They're paying him a lot of money, but they have, in a short season, have a very legitimate case to try to take that division, like they always do. It's St. Louis; they always find a way. What are you expecting out of a guy like Dylan Carlson, who you mentioned Tyler O'Neill, but Carlson could be ready to go right out of the gate. He showed in spring training he could be. Anyone have an opinion? We can talk about rookies in general now on who could be ready to go and who's not, because that service time thing really changes things.
I love Carlson. I absolutely love the guy. There's a little bit of power, a little bit of speed there, and some batting average floor. I mean, it's hard to find. You can get him. I mean, he was going right around 300 in ADP. Again, another guy who's probably moved up since I believe there wasn't even news. Amidst all this craziness or lack of news, I should say, and everything else going on in the world, there was a little bit of news about him possibly getting a chance to play right away, which would be huge for obviously anybody who drafted early had his shares or and his value going forward. And I think, although maybe the ceiling isn't what people are hoping, I think there's just such a solid floor, and the defense alone should get him in that lineup.
Does the Joe, just to jump you in here, sure. Is this something that scares you off of any rookies? Because I mentioned Mountcastle. He looked like he was ready to go, probably was going to be super tuned until June in a normal season. Now, the Orioles finished first or finished last place with or without him. He has nothing to prove, but do they want to give him a full year of service time literally for no reason? Does that scare, like even Carlson, if they're not going to, they have to kind of make the choice. Are they going to put him in the lineup from day one and, bench a guy like Fowler and make that move? Because again, the way the rule is written, if they bring him up July 1st or August 1st, he gets a year of service time.
Yeah, dude. I mean, we're all guessing completely at this, but with a team like the Orioles, there's literally no reason for them to bring up any other prospects. None at all. And as an O's fan, if they bring up any of them, I will be pissed off. There's no reason to do it. Just keep it down next year, guys. A team like St. Louis, as you said, like they could steal that division. They're good enough to do it. I think you get a couple weeks into the season, see how your team's doing, and then if you're competing, bring them up. Let them make an impact. I'm sort of out of the prospect. I've been kind of diving into football a little bit more, so I'm kind of out of the prospect name right now. But
Take them out.
Sorry. So names aren't popping off the top of my head right now. But yeah, I mean that's basically it in a nutshell. It's just it's going to be very interesting to see how teams handle these prospects.
Well, here, let's jump over to another team because this is someone I'm always interested in. Half the industry hates him, half like him. Anyone who knows me probably knows who I'm about to bring up. His name is Nick Madrigal over on the Chicago White Sox. They, in a division where the Indians, with their sneaky starting pitching in a short season, could definitely make some noise if Cookie and Clevenger and Bieber all ready to go, and Savale is still, shows up even half of what he was last year. The Twins, juggernaut offense, but the starting pitching's iffy. The White Sox, if their young pitching makes a run at it, how long are they going to let Lurie Garcia sit there and just be awful? And Luis Robert, we don't know kind of what to expect from him. The only thing that seems to travel from the minors to the majors that's almost a given is plate discipline, which is why I like Madrigal. He steals bases, and if he leads off for a team that has no leadoff hitter, I know Tim Anderson's up there, batting champion. I love Tim Anderson, but he's not an on-base guy. No one's an on-base guy in this team. Where do you put a guy like that in a shortened season where I feel like the White Sox, if this guy looks okay again in whenever spring training starts up, if he is going to be on this team 9th or 1st, I like him too. They seem like a team that should immediately throw him into the fire.
When it comes to Madrigal, man, I guess I'll jump right in like always. When it comes to Madrigal, I'm okay with him, I guess. I'm not a huge fan of him. I think when you said half the industry hates him, I think you were referring to me, and I don't hate him. I'm just not.
Prospects 365. Ray hates him.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's never.
Well, he has no power. He has zero power.
You have to remember,
coming.
If you're taking him, don't get me wrong, he offers upside in two of the most valuable skill sets that you could be looking for in a hitter. And with that said, you can get that late, but I don't know. He's an absolute zero at power, and if he doesn't lead off right away, you're looking at a guy who could possibly be batting at the bottom of the lineup, which again hinders his plate appearances and hinders the upside that you're drafting him for. So I'm not again. I think I'm more anti him this year than I am going forward. So hate is a strong word on my end, but as far as 2020 goes, I'm just not in unless we see him. And like you said, he might not even be starting right away because they seem to be set on giving Garcia that time. So that's another reason why it's like you don't have time to sit on players. You have to turn and burn that waiver wire. You really do this. You guys turn and burn it because you got to make up those stats. You can't afford to sit and wait on players.
So as far as we were getting to rookies, is there anyone that stands out to any of the rest of you that seems like in a shortened season gets their value hurt or hindered or excelled? Because everyone always overvalues rookies. I said some comment on Twitter before about was the failed third baseman from the Toronto Blue Jays. I can't even think of their names.
Lowry?
Oh yeah, Brett Lowry, Brett Wallace, and I said I had a blanket statement about like most prospects.
He's still going to be good.
Most prospects fail, and what I meant was, and I like Ralph Lipschitz like got on me. I didn't mean most prospects fail, because if you draft someone in the first round, they become an everyday major leaguer. That's a win. But as fantasy, people really overvalue prospects. Last year, they had Vlad Jr. projected to win the batting title. Still not going to win the batting title in year 2, everybody. No. You got to, like Luis Robert, for an example, he was going in the first round. It's, sure, the ceiling's there. It's a mistake. Mathematically, it's a mistake. I mean, no matter what anyone wants to say. Because you're more, most rookies struggle, even the really great ones. But is there any prospects, again, that you guys like or dislike because of a shortened season?
I kind of like Mackenzie Gore, just because I think the Padres were really probably going to go for it this year. And their GM, I feel like, is kind of on the hot seat. And by, trying, acquiring Pham and stuff, I just feel like that they're going to call him up really early, because they're going to try and make the playoffs. I mean, they have Zach Davies, who's I hate, and Garrett Richards, who gets injured every single year. So I feel like we definitely see him, reach the rotation at some point this year, and early on as well.
I would hope opening day, right?
I mean, you would think, but
Hey,
we don't really know
yet. Paddock. Keep hope alive.
Yeah, they did, and that's why I think especially because they're going for it, this year. Why wouldn't we see him if not opening day, but really early on?
And on the other side of that, I'm actually out on Kopech now because of the opposite reasons. Yeah. They have the arms there in Chicago to kind of get by. They have too many, and he's coming off TJ. They don't, and he already had reliever risk as is. Maybe they'll ease him in. Give him maybe he'll get some starts towards the end of the season, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's in that 2-inning fireman role that they kind of bring him out of the bullpen, build him up that way, and then let him loose. But even then, he won't pitch more than 4 to 5 innings in a start, it seems like, at this point anyway.
No, I don't think we see Nate Pearson either.
Oh yeah, he's another guy. But
yeah,
what about like Joe Adele? Everybody was all over this kid. I don't know. I don't know if I'm buying it now.
Well, here's the thing: when he got up to AAA, his strikeout rate went up to almost 30%. He didn't seem ready for AAA at all. No, therefore, he's not ready for the majors. And he also, they traded for Jock Peterson to take his spot. And I know that they wanted him to platoon. They loved him in that ballpark, but they made that trade like it was done. So that kind of tips their hand of where I think they're going. And again, in a shortened season, I think it's best that they give him time. So I would expect him not to be up.
I agree.
Now, this is just a really deep league, probably a relevant guy even in the deepest of leagues, but for some reason I have this weird obsession with Will Craig of the Pirates. And he's like a 25 home run, 250 hitter. And I've been taking him all offseason, like in early draft champions leagues. And with a DH, he fits the DH role. He's like a quad A guy almost, it seems like at this point. He's been AAA for a little bit. But the 25 home runs, 250, I'm talking about the deepest of formats, so probably irrelevant for most. But Will Craig comes to mind for some reason as another guy that's just random that could make I'm just going.
This is more of a long-term thing with the DH. I think we'll move on from this once we've talked about Will Craig.
Yeah, that's it.
Let's talk about things that are actually actionably helpful for people in a short season.
I do have one more thing about the minor league stuff before we're going to move on altogether. Oh yeah, this light bulb popped up. I'm like, okay, cool. We'll talk about Will Craig because for no reason. Now watch when he's relevant for that 1 week in the short season.
We were just trying to tell people who are wasting draft picks on rookies that you're really wasting them now. That's how we were thinking.
Well, there is just one more thing about the minor leagues. One more thing about the minor league as a whole is that there is no minors. It looks like at this point, it doesn't look like there's gonna be a minor league season. So if you take the fact that there's no minor league season, pair it with the fact that there's probably gonna be expanded rosters, you're gonna have players that are in mid development, guys are on the brink of making the league that are gonna be hindered by this. You might see them actually come up and play a little bit. I mean, I know they're talking about taxi squads and stuff. You don't know how that's gonna work. But you might see some random guys like DJ Peters types, like I said, random guys come up and be difference makers for at least a week or so. And I see in the comments someone mentioned Spencer Howard. How did we forget that? He's already even talked about as being fifth in the rotation as is. So for us to skip on him, my bad. Spencer Howard's an obvious winner here. But other than that, it's a whole other tangent. Again, I'm reading the comments as I'm talking because his brain works differently.
Before we get out of hitting, streaky hitters like stolen bases and home runs are usually like one category guys in Roto that either you hate because they are unitaskers, or you draft by design because you literally missed out on a category earlier on. In a shortened season, people that get on a hot streak could actually win you a season. So is there any players that maybe you were out on that or you were now considering, maybe especially from a stolen base standpoint? I think someone had made a comment. I think it was Vlad, Roto Gut, had mentioned something about he can't wait for someone to go out there and do something in the fab bidding begin. And I said something along the lines of when Billy Hamilton steals 3 bases in extra innings as a defensive replacement, where's the bidding going to go? So that actually is a joke. Is there any streaky hitters from like a power or speed standpoint that you are almost like must-haves for you because, they have the ability to put down all that power? Like even Chris Davis last year, before the injuries, hit 11 home runs in April?
Yeah, I have 2 names that come to mind right away. One's kind of a power speed combo, and Ian Happ. He's not that late. He's going about 380p, so he's a guy that I think he's another one that actually, if you were questioning his everyday playing time, the DH, we skipped on him. He was a guy that definitely solidifies his playing time. And then the other one's Jay Bruce as far as power goes. Jay Bruce is going really late, and we're talking about a guy who can literally put up 20 and a half a season because he goes in these runs of just dominance. And not to mention the home park doesn't hurt. And he talk about if you want a DH, that's probably going to be DHing against a strong side of a platoon. Jay Bruce is the guy. And again, there's legitimate big time home run, league winning home run power there.
Anyone else want to chime in there? I always say I'm usually death by 1,000 paper cuts by anyone who doesn't know what that means. I love getting guys that give you like the Tommy Pham level, Austin Meadows. You give me a little power and a little speed, and I will build my entire team around that. Ahmad Rosario, and I will just take you out. It's risky this year because if they don't kind of give you them in the area you want, it sometimes might be better to target. Someone mentioned Cameron Maben is a late bat. I love Yancey.
Well, nice. Dude, I talked him up a bit in the preseason. He was leading off every day.
He's going to lead off for the Tigers. Yeah. Tiger fans don't understand it. Like they see Shoop and they see Crone and they just want to get some extra bats, extra fans in the seats. But yeah, he's a great example. Anyone else have anyone before we move on to the bullpen?
I was kind of thinking of who we were talking about before, Kevin Crone, just because I feel like he can maybe almost pull an Aquino, come up to the majors. No one's really seen him before. And maybe he starts off hot and just starts hitting bombs and hits 10 in a month for us.
An interesting name that either believe in what he did in his first month or his second month is Aquino on Artides.
Well, yeah, I know we don't, but
if we'll have to see. The Reds look like it was a foregone conclusion. He was heading to the minors, right? He was the odd man out. He was going to get every day at bats in the minors. With the DH, you got to assume he's on this team. Do you think does he move up in value for you guys? Or are you just the risk of a platoon? Are you kind of still staying away?
I mean,
because before, when people thought he was playing, he was getting drafted high.
I think the whole Cincy outfield gets a little bit of a boost, but I'm still probably going to shy away for the most part. It's because I'm not really super impressed with any of the guys outside of Castellanos.
Yeah.
I think there's one more name. Oh, gosh, you're killing me. I just want to throw one more name out there.
Go ahead. Hey, man, we got 13 minutes to talk about the bullpen. Go ahead. Do your thing.
That's fine. Yeah, the last name is actually from the same exact team, Mike. The reason why maybe Crone gets blocked is Josh Rojas. And if we didn't mention Josh Rojas, I think Chamberlain would be very upset with us. Because Rojas, and you want your speed and batting average, he's a guy that you can get. He's being forgotten. He was sent down to AAA, I believe, right before it all happened, or was going to be. It was pretty much a conclusion. But maybe he gets the chance to come up because maybe he offers more defensive, because he was going to be a utility guy. He could probably offer more of a defensive, can't think of the word right now for some reason. It doesn't matter. And last year he stole, I can't think of the word, but last year he stole 23 bags and only got caught 6 times. So it's again a good success, decent success rate. Can hit upwards of 250, 300 as well, but just an overall maybe more of a better fit for what they need on that team. Can play multiple positions. And just that skill set's valuable as far as speed goes in fantasy. So he might be a guy worth re-rostering again. Somebody that might have been forgotten after kind of how he's been treated in the spring. So
all right, the last thing we'll talk about is the bullpen. Everybody, the in saves leagues, good luck to you. I mean, this is going to be a tough ride. If you're in saves and holds, why even draft anybody? You can almost service your entire team off the waiver wire. But let's talk about that real quick. There's going to be expanded rosters. You're probably going to be using those on extra bullpen arms. I mentioned this on the turn 2 a couple of times. Teams like the Mets can't afford to watch Edwin Diaz blow 7 games in a row. The Reds aren't going to watch Raisel Iglesias blow 3 or 4 in a row. Teams that are armed with extra talent, even good arms like Kenley Jansen, you don't expect him to get pulled, but they have a lot of talent there. There could be a lot of hot hand stuff in a shortened season, whether it's offensively or out of the pen. So what are your guys' strategy for? I already waited on bullpen. Like I always say, Keela. Jimenez. I don't care who my closers are. So assuming you're in a saves league, how much are you bumping up guys like Emilio Pagan, Aaron Bummer, people like that, if there's any kind of struggle, they could legitimately have some real value. And obviously holds leagues, it really opens it up. John, we haven't heard from you in a while.
Hi.
Joey Fatone, take it away.
I guess in theory, the shorter the season, the higher value should be on those few guys that are not only elite as far as skill sets, but also as far as role. I've never personally been one to pay way up for relievers. This would be the first scenario that I would do so in a fab or waiver league. Generally, I'm with you, Matt. Give me 2 quality guys towards the end of the closer pool. Hopefully one of them pans out, and then I'll replace the other one, hoping to be sharp on the waiver wire, or with the guys you mentioned before, guys like Bummer, who have the skill but might not have the role. I think there's a room on every roster, one roster spot. If you're going to punt closers, I think part of that strategy should be to reserve one roster spot for a Karinchak or a Bummer or, Darwin's and Hernandez. One of those guys that are just out of control with the stuff and the filth that could slide into the role. But
would you ever feel the need? I know people in football hate this, handcuffing people, but would you ever, in a shortened season, if you were actually going to pay up for a guy like Kirby Yates and you're paying quite a bit, would you ever feel the need in a certain roster if you had an extra spot to kind of handcuff Pagan to him?
It's got to be specific. See, somebody like Pagan and Tampa Bay, there's too many mouths to feed, and it's very.
Well, he's in San Diego.
Oh, even still, it's another situation that's not that clear. So I'm only going to be worrying about guys that have the role, and I'm only be looking at backups if they're a clear backup. So maybe like, and again, to Ozuna, somebody who has a lock on the role. I think Presley, who I would not draft normally, is worth having. If you're going to have Colomé, who I don't really like, I think Bummer is a necessity. So I think that's where I'm going at, depending on a case-to-case basis. If you have a guy and there's any kind of flimsiness there, definitely back him up if the guy behind him has the goods.
In the chat, someone mentioned Presley. You just mentioned him. Corey Knebel, absolutely. He'll be back sooner than later. You don't know how Josh Hader is going to be used, especially in a short season. They can literally do anything with that guy. They can use him as a starter, middle, anything. Yeah. Mike, Joe, before we kind of get wrapped up, any final thoughts on the bullpen or anything in a shortened season before Nick comes in and chases us out?
I would say go ahead and find those teams that are going to be good, going to win a lot of games like Atlanta, and get both guys. Yeah, both guys are whatever, but you're going to rack up lots of saves and holds if you just get, dang it, I had the names in my head.
Smith and Melanson.
Too fast. Yeah, Melanson and Smith. Thank you. Yeah. Whatever, right? Melanson, nobody wants him, but I'll take him now because the fear of him losing the closer job was high, but now you don't care.
Yeah, and especially if you have a couple of guys like that could pitch okay. Someone mentioned Diego Castillo. If you wanted Anderson, also in Tampa Bay, you pair them together, all of a sudden, Alex Fast came on the show. He wrote a couple of articles on how teams are using more and more relievers to pick up saves. And especially this season, if you can afford to lock down an entire job, at least you're not getting a zero out of those saves, especially if you can lock down a couple of people, like I said, Yates and Pagan, at least they're good. It's even better if you can get them cheaper. Mike, before we go, what's up? Any final thoughts?
Personally, stop smiling, Mike.
My smile is intimidating.
It is. It's creeping me out. I feel like, you got to get the guys who really cemented in the roles. Otherwise, I'm going to pretty much be kind of waiting because I feel like the turnover on the position is going to be even worse this year, especially the shortened season. So you're going to be able to probably work the wire as much as possible.
Hey, plus, what's happening with the freaking trade deadline? Is there one? Yeah. We all assume Brad Hand was leaving. Karinchak could take over. Is he stuck there? Is there a trade deadline? Is anyone being traded?
Yeah, it's true. We got to wait for that.
So that's something that really will change too, but we can't talk about because we don't know.
Well, I think if they open up the playoff structure, I think it eliminates that. You know what I mean? I think it eliminates the chance for that because if you're gonna double the amount of teams that get into the playoffs, we've already seen what a wild card race can look like, and it involves almost everybody whose team name doesn't rhyme with Schmaltimore. So you may have just 80% of the league vying for, even if it's only a single spot, you may have 3/4 or upwards of the league vying for these positions. And listen, it might be the only chance this decade that the Tigers is one of these teams that kind of could sneak in, that it could happen. You know, that's in the cards. It's in the all right. Yeah, Tigers was not a great example. Maybe like the Angels, right? The Angels are kind of middling and looking to make waves, but I don't think anyone
The
has
Marlins.
a lot of noise this year. Well, listen, I kind of like the Marlins this year.
The rotation's low key decent.
I love the rotation.
But I think the point remains, you know, that with the competition, there might be organizations that say, listen, man, we have a chance to give our fans a playoff berth. Even if it's one game, we're not going to deal the only pitcher that can K 9 guys per 9. You know?
And the most important thing I think you can tell for anybody for the short season is you have to be able to adapt. Because we said the 6-man rotation, the expanded rosters, how teams will be playing their DH and divvying up at bats. You know, we have Dusty Baker down in Houston. Is he going to screw Kyle Tucker like he does every other rookie? We don't know. Different teams are going to handle the shortened season very differently. You got to be able to roll this thing over. The hot bats like Aquino come, you got to be able to pick them up quick. You got to be aggressive. You got to go with your gut. It's going to be a wild ride, this one.
Yeah,
Mr. Kurland, anything to add?
Not really to add, just my personal, I guess it is something to add. It's my personal strategy. Meh is always a good way to answer everything. One word, and everybody gets it. It doesn't get much better than that. Meh and nah. But we're good. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, so my personal thing is it hasn't really changed as far as strategy with closers. This year was the first year I just liked the prices of a lot of closers. And I was actually taking one guy. I felt like I can anchor for the saves, and I still like to do that. And a lot of it, the time, it was getting a Chapman or an Asuna in like the 8th or 9th round, and then I would wait forever. And now that plays even better to my strategy because now I'm going to get that one guy I know is going to get me saves, and then I'll play the game and get like a low-end Kinsler, Bummer, and I'll pair it up with guys that are going to help me in ratios, Ks, and I don't need to win every category. People honestly forget that you don't need to win, but you want to come in the top 3 to 5 sometimes. I'd say most of the time across the board. So if you can just if you get that one guy, pair him with a couple low-end guys, and then play the waiver wire aggressively for him, fab bidding, whatever, then that's the way I would go.
All right. I don't know if Nick is going to come in at any point here.
Hey, all right.
Beetlejuice.
I'll just once.
Pitcher list.
Oh, there I am. Hey, what's up? I will say this. Michael Simione, I got to say it over and over. How dare you try and say, Kurland, stop smiling. Oh, it's smiling.
It's just a little creepy at times, you know?
Hey.
I want to see like who is the guy in the shortened season that's like, okay, you know what? Every single league, this is the one I'm going to die on the hill for. This is the one that I have to get in every single league. I'm sure all of you guys have someone like that. Starting with you, Joe, do you have someone that comes to mind?
Oh man, put me on the spot.
I trusted you the most to have someone.
Sure. Don't actually. Sorry. I'll you know what? I'll go out there. I'll go out there and say somebody like Joey Gallo, just because like he's just gonna hit it for a ton of power, right? And like in a shortened season, you want to get those guys that are gonna separate.
That's a good point. Not to mention, I mean, he had like a 275 average last year.
Yeah, he was solid, man.
I know we don't expect that.
No,
but I mean, that still could be not as like 230 as we've seen before from him. Yeah. I mean, in the shortened season, right? Anything can happen like that. That's a good call. Matt, what do you got? And I mean Williams, not Kurland.
Yeah, apparently.
I'm gonna go full homer with this one and say JD Davis.
Of course.
Who Kurland's with me on him, but he's someone that I absolutely love. Did a whole breakdown on him. Some people agree with me. If you look at his batted ball data, he's JD Martinez. If everything holds up, which I believe he did, he won a batting title in the minor leagues. All he needed was a shirt at bats, and I think this DH gives it to him. Whether it's Cespedes moving out of the outfield or Cano moving out of the infield, I think JD Davis gets those at bats now. So I think he's absolutely worth where he's going, and I will be grabbing him ahead of that. So JD Davis for sure.
Yeah, I get that one. There was also a concern about injury for him a little bit in the preseason. I remember there was a slight scare, and then
because he actually already had a slightly torn shoulder that he played with constantly. That's why it didn't worry me as much. And some people are like, "Oh, that's a red flag. Why would you want to always be playing with that?" But he did it all last year, and he just it was more of a precautionary thing. So it's not as big a worry for me.
I mean, the thing we talked about yesterday was Steven Lyman, and I meant to add JD Davis to that list. But he essentially made a really good point saying, like, look, a lot of these injuries that we get worried about normally in spring training, we can throw that away because they have so much time to heal now. And the worry normally is that they don't fully heal by the time they get back So they have in the spring that even when they do come back, it's not actually fully healed. And then it makes an effect through the entire year. Well, now it's, hey, they have all this time to heal. So any sort of worries, small things that we had with guys in the spring, well, that should be totally fine for the most part now. So JD Davis, yeah, he's definitely come back on my radar because of that. Let's go to you, Kurland. Who's on your mind?
Well, JD Davis is always on my mind, but
other
than JD Davis, of course, I've actually recently gotten really interested in, and I target in all drafts is I'm in on Stanton. I'm not worried about the injuries, and I like him to be legit. Like, same reasons why you like Joey Gallo. We're talking about a guy who might be a little more expensive than Gallo, but a guy who could legitimately be a league winner because we've seen him go on tears and crush half-season stats. We've seen him do this. I know we haven't seen him lately because he can't get on the field, but he should be back on the field to at least start. And I'm talking, and this hurts me to say, but like guys, like I hate Alonso as far as price goes, but we love Alonso, we love Olsen, but considering prices right now with Olsen moving up and whatnot, Stanton offers the same probably floor with a better ceiling, just with the injury caveat. So give me all this John Collins, can't even say his name, Mike Stanton. I'll just call him Mike Stanton. Give me all the Mike.
Old lefty reliever for the Yankees. Now, quick show of hands. Who he would rather have? Oh, I'll get. Don't worry. Quick show of hands. Who would rather have Giancarlo Stanton than Aaron Judge here?
Oh yeah, hands. Judge is not even swinging a bat yet.
Hey, one guy is injury prone, and one guy just happens to get injured. There's a difference. Yeah. Aaron Judge is injury prone, in my opinion. I think Stanton just gets injured. I think there's a difference between the two.
Okay, cool.
Stop taking steroids.
So I'll go to you instead of Michael. All right, because you seem very eager. Who you got?
Oh, I forgot I wasn't last. No, I'll be left out with SP Streamer as long as we're not out in the cold together.
All right, Simione, what do you got?
All right. I'm just gonna go with the guy who I've always been going with, and that's Max Fried. Even though Nick Pollock called him next Pavetta, but
closest to it. Closest to it. Who we have?
Yeah, I just really love. I love the pitch mix change with the slider that he started throwing more, and I love the curveball. So I think he's got great breaking balls, and I think the Braves will kind of let him go deep in the game. So.
Wait, Nick, so they were all wrong, right? Like, I have the right answer? I think they're wrong. I think I have the right answer, okay? So this person, because we're talking in particularly in regards to a shortened season, this person was first in the major leagues in FIP. He was first in OPS allowed. He was first in weighted on-base average against. He was in the 98th percentile in ERA, WHIP, in and hard hit percentage. The answer is, and definitively will be for 2020, Tyler Glasnow is the answer. This is he's potentially the most dominant pitcher on a per inning basis that we saw last year, including everybody, first rounders included. He can go the distance if it's only 100 innings, and he can win the Cy Young. This guy is electric. Give it to me, especially at the cost. Man.
All right, so because you just said that, John, I'm going to hold you to something. And I hope if Tyler Glasnow wins the Cy Young, can you sing for all of us, I Can Go the Distance?
I believe I can fly.
No, that's not it. No, that's not it. You don't have to do it now either.
No, I won't. I won't let it naked.
Oh, man. Well, here's the thing. You better get, if you're going to sing, John, you got to keep the beard. Because we
will make a whole thing. We'll have the video and stuff, and we'll have you fade in and out here on the left and the right.
What if you want to do like a Titanic, like a front, like a...
Do you know the song I Can Go?
I can get him.
Isn't that if you're movie Hercules Cake song? Is that what you're talking about?
That's the distance, right?
Oh.
No, I Can Go the Distance.
Oh, going the distance.
Yeah, it's from Hercules.
Okay. We'll figure this out.
They're gone. The rails.
Just start hanging up on us, Nick. Just start hanging up on us. It's fine.
Michael Bolton. I just Googled it, man. I don't know.
I knew we were going to go off the rails eventually. I knew it.
Man. Well, at least you guys didn't talk about whiskey as you said you would.
I knew this was going to get
but no, it's not going to happen anyway. It's not going to happen because Tyler Glasnow only did that for a very short amount of time, had the highest put away rate of any pitcher, which is weird, and that's kind of an anomaly a bit that doesn't really stick around. I want that. That'll be really fun. I think he's just too volatile and like.
Yeah, I think so.
It's to be wild in that way, and that's hard for really. I mean, yeah, if it's a short enough season, that could theoretically.
Quick 10
Rays like
second.
their bullpen a little too much, man.
Quick 10-second point.
Somebody with particularly in regards to a short season for you, Nick, that says like, wow, the short season separates him.
Yeah, I understand that completely. Yeah.
Does anyone
Matt, the last 10 seconds?
10-second point. This is a cop-out for the last answer because he's a first-round pick. Does anyone want to throw out the possibility of Mookie Betts throwing up a full season worth of stats in 100 games as a free agent to be? Let's see him go get his money just on a full-horse sprint.
Right.
Oh, well, listen, he's the big factor of the DH as well. You know, you get to add back those runs. Oh, Mookie Betts should be number 4, I think, in all leagues. And if you were to even toss him around with Christian Yelich, I would be offended.
I'm sorry, Nick. I can't say anything without John attacking us.
He's got to kick us out.
I got to kick you out.
Just start hanging up.
Man.
You guys are the best.
Yeah.
The only way I leave.
Bye, everybody.
I don't leave.
Thanks, Nick.
All right.